Manyoko so we ya son anamu Kia kwale bato we money o ya do mo si akwie ya o Amo manyoko so we ya son den bemu ya Kia kwale bato we money o ya do mo si akwie ya o Kia se pa yanju o kia Se pa yanju o kiyan kiyan sa pa yanju ka o kiyan ma si pa yanju o so si o lele o si o lele o ya si o lele o ya si o lele yo amo manya ko so wi ya son dan be mu Kia pani bato we money o abinyon do mo si akwie ya o Kia se pa yan jijo mama Kia se pa yan jijo re son ke wo kia ya Kia se pa yan ju o Kia ya uri money mo re tole se ma bembe son bi Kia ya uri manyo e abato ni Passion même oh Kia ya we money More tole se ma même pio abinyo be
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to yet another edition of Tough Talking Thursday on Focus on Liberia. My name is Dennis Jar, and we are broadcasting from Atlanta, Georgia. In tonight's edition of Tough Talking Thursday, we're going to be looking at the elections result and the runoff. And we're going to be dealing with issues like, why the result that we have, why is it that way? So I'm asking, why did we get the results we have with two political parties accounting for about 88% of the vote? And believe it or not, there have been some theories about what Mr. Appon was able to pull. So, which many are now referring to as the Appon effect. And we're going to leave it with the historians and pundits to tell in due time what happened. But we'll be kind of postulating some theories about the Appon effect and what's your take. How did the NEC do? And do they need some improvements? We're going to be talking about that. And then we get to the results, the runoff. What do you expect? What do you expect? Of course, who's going to win? And how will this year's election impact our democracy and future elections? With me to discuss all this, we have our governance consultant, Mr. Ahmed Salif. Mr. Salif, welcome to the show.
Always a pleasure, Dennis. Thank you for the invitation. I'm looking forward to the discussion.
Thank you. Let me also welcome Dr. Abdullah Dukle, another panelist here on Tough Talking Thursday. Dr. Duke, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Dennis. Happy to be here. Let's do it. As Ahmed would say.
Let me also welcome our host of our FOL Marketplace, Mr. Gabriel Tabito Carter. Gabriel, is this your first time on Tough Talking? You're welcome.
I believe it is. And yeah, it's good to be here. I'm looking forward to having a good discussion.
We want to also welcome all our viewers from across the globe. This is Tough Talking Thursday, where we talk tough and there is no room for Tabata. Again, the elections are over, at least their first round, 99+% being announced, with President Weah, the incumbent, Weah of CDC, in a slight lead, followed by Joseph Newman Boakai, or in the 43% area, followed by the rest of the 18 candidates with less than 5%. Well, That's what we got. And the election started, a lot of things. So let me say, what happened? I mean, why do we have the result that we have? What can we say? Let me start with Mr. Gabriel Carter. Mr. Gabriel, we have the election where almost like a two-party race, 2%, two persons with over 88%, or almost 88%, the rest being very small. What do you make of that?
Yeah, Dennis, thank you. That is a great question, and I think that is something that all of us are trying to figure out. But I think from my perspective, I think what happened is something that I've said before over probably several shows on here, is that in as much that people don't want to accept that, I think we've gravitated from, as we normally say, the bread and butter issues to the crowd narrative. And I think this election was what I would call a popularity contest. Seriously, it was nothing about the issues. There was nobody discussing. There was no debate, no policy. You will not hear most of the candidates on different media outlet talking about their policies and how they're going to change the country. It was mostly about popularity. And I think this is how the crowd, as we normally see in elections in Liberia, gravitated towards that, and it became about the whole, popularity contest. And I think right now, as you can see, the two candidates that are in the race, uh, unfortunately, the two most popular candidates, and I think that's why we got the numbers that we got today. I think it's just everybody just going towards the most popular candidates and nothing about issues.
So you believe the voters voted for the most popular? How does
Yes.
that account for Mr. Appleton? Are you saying Mr. Appleton is more popular than Mr. Cummings and Councillor Gonglo?
That's that twist as well with Mr. Appleton. I think I didn't want to buy into that theory that I think people got his VP confused with Mr. Cummings because they have the same last name. I want to believe that. I want to believe that because there is nothing that can account as to why he became the third, or the fourth person in the race. Like the dark horse we expected in this race was Gonglo. We thought he was going to be the dark horse, the wild card in this race. But Appleton, nobody saw him. Now, if any of his supporters are watching, please keep me honest. But I did not see him campaigning. I did not see him doing anything. Not even any other platform. Maybe you guys may have interviewed his candidates or his VP somewhere, but I did not see him campaign. So I mean, the only logical thing that you can attribute towards him being the outlier dark horse in his race was, I think people just got his VP confused with the whole Alex and Alex. Um, you know, they just took him for, I think they mistook him for Mr. Cummings. Seriously.
Thank you. I mean, we'll discuss the Appleton effect separately. I just wanted to throw in that bit because your theorists say they're voting for the most popular. I thought Gonglo was very popular in Maserado. But let me go to Dr. Duke. Dr. Duke, how do you why you think people voted that way? Or in other words, what you make of the results of the election? What is it telling us? At least the presidential elections.
Well, it tells us that maybe the president at the presidential level, people are probably inching towards a two-party system. Although it may change again. This is not the in 85 was UP and against NDPL on Madam Sirleaf 97. So I think this might change. But now for these elections, I think people just wanted to choose between George Weah and Boakai, and meaning, I think the main concern of the people really was not so much qualification and you for whatever things that other people brought. I think it was about trust. Who do you trust most? Do you trust your country with George Weah, or you trust the grandpa, old man, hands, that kind of thing. So I think that it came down to trust. Who do you trust most? It was not about anything else. If you look at all the qualification and everything else, everything was just washed away. So I think they have voted to give us two-party system. If we change it and deny it, even if Alex had Alex Cummings had all the votes that Mr. What's his name got, Appleton got, he would still be under 5%. So that's not a big change. You gave him half of the Camara votes, he would still be under 5%. So I think people voted the way they wanted to because they had two choices. They had, we trust the old man or we trust George Weah. And George Weah has his base. There's some people who vote for him. I don't care what you do. It's like Trump. But Unity Party also is a structural party that had brought on board a lot of people from different parties, from NPP, different parties came along. So therefore, I think that, is that way, and that's what we have to go with.
But why would they not trust Gonglo, Cummings, and any of those people? What's that trust factor that would limit to just the two former incumbent? Yeah.
Because they both have a record. If you can say anything, you could say he's probably the poorest vice president you could probably see in Africa anywhere after 12 years in power that does not have money. And with all the issues about corruption, young people coming over, in government, making money overnight, building high rises in 2-3 months. People say, okay, maybe the old man got something going. Maybe the old man got, there's some intrinsic factor. Say, yeah, maybe you could trust him. And George Weah got his base. Why they didn't trust Gongolo? I don't know. Maybe Gongolo is new to them as a politician. He's not new to them as a lawyer. He's not new to them as, as somebody who opposed dictatorship and all of that. But surprised to a lot of people. Cummings, I don't know. Maybe it has to do with his team. He has to do with the agenda, or he has to do with the long struggle. It was 3 years fighting against CPP and all of that, and never had a chance to really build up his political party. He went through trying to pick a VP.
Right. And
calling, they call it a fixer because Boakai says they rescue.
And the same question, are you saying they trust Appon more than Cummings and Gonglo? Or is Appon just an outlier?
I will not comment on the Appon factors. Somebody gave the best logical explanation. That some people came to vote for the senator, and they say that number one, I vote for it. I don't care who that is.
We'll come to that Appon. What I'm saying, Dr. Do you talk about trusting Boakai?
Trust him? I don't know if he's...
No, they don't trust him because you said it's the trust factor. So I'm asking, did they trust Appon to vote for him?
George Weah? Yeah.
All right, thank you. Let me go to Mr. Yeah, did they trust Appon?
I get this. Yeah, I get you. This is kind of, I'm not coming straight. It's not coming up straight to me because when I talk, it's like it takes 5-10 seconds.
Yeah, there's a delay.
Are you hearing me delay?
No, we can hear you. I think there's a delay on Dr. Duke's
Yeah, but I can hear you slow. Yeah, like there's a
All right.
delay, about 3-4 seconds.
Yeah.
All right. Let me go to Mr. Salif here on why do we have the result we
I
have?
didn't get that question.
No, my question was you were
Okay,
talking
go
about
ahead.
the trust factor. You said the trust Weah and the trust Boakai. So I'm saying, did they trust Appon over Cummings and Gonglo?
Well, maybe Appon had a different message, or his name was
So
at the
the
right
issue
place
of
at the
trust
right
are
time.
different. So there's no more trust.
I don't know the
It's
guy. I
messy.
have no clue, so I cannot explain the phenomenon.
Thank you. Mr. Salif.
Thank you.
For
Thank you, Dennis.
him, I don't know. I cannot explain it why he's there. But if he's there, he's there.
Thank you. Mr. Salif, why do we have the result we have?
We have the results we have because this was a very competitive election. It was very competitive. All the candidates, at least the top tier candidates, canvassed across the country. I mean, if you look at the Unity Party, for example, everybody, they think of the perception about Ambassador Boakai, former Vice President Boakai, is that he's broke, he doesn't have money. Yet he was able to move around the country. He did not go to the Southeast, granted. I don't know if that was a strategic decision, but he was able to go to significant parts of the country where they thought they needed to invest resources. The incumbent, President Weah, obviously, the incumbents always have resources, the power of the state person. And so he went around the country. And if you know anything about George Weah, he is a populist. He came to power through populism of sort. When he ran for office in 2000, was it 2011, 2005, 2011, 2017? He didn't have a record to defend at that time. This time around, he ran on his record, and the people voted basically as a referendum for or against him. So he had something this time around to go around the country to say, look, we've done this, we've done that, we can do this, we can do that. Or people trying to defend. It was on the defensive at times. Based on what the opponents were saying about him. To the contrary, Mr. Carter, I think there were policy discussions, and they have been the type of policy discourse you were looking for. You just have to look at context. I mean, I always say, and I don't say it for the sake of my own saying, this is something that have been studied extensively. Elections are run, so electoral strategies are developed on three primary things. You can build other things around them, but these are the three factors I'm here to tell you now. And I've said this many times on this show. Number one, the political environment. What do we have? What are we dealing with? What's the mood of the country? What are the sort of major trending issues in the country? Are we divided? Are we at war? Did we just come from war? Are the people suffering? Is the economy doing well? Those kinds of things. Is the country polarized based on some kind of, along some kind of lines? It's ethno or regional or some major factor that's happening in the country, any country around the world. Campaign seasons, you look at your strategy built on three factors. One, political environment. The second is, what resources does the candidate have? How much money do you have? Are you able to build a sophisticated campaign organization that is well thought out? Are you able to develop a campaign strategy, have a message that is well thought out, that you are able to deploy resources in places where you believe your investment will be worthy? And the third factor is, who is my opponent? It may be one opponent, two opponents, how many opponents? Meaning, who do you see as the major challenge to you, whom you must try to neutralize in some way through strategy or otherwise? Those are the three major factors here. And so these candidates, the top tier candidates, play on these factors. They went around the country. based on what's happening in the country, the level of suffering and so on, the people came out. There was turnout. It was a massive turnout, and there was a competitive race. That's why we got the result we got.
But Mr. Selu, if you say competitive, how come we have just two parties? This has never happened.
Right.
I mean, there is no 10%, there is no 7%. Everybody is falling below 5%. I mean, why?
In a way, that is a form of competitive result. So let's look at the Appon factor you've been talking about, right? There are several theories about, a number of things.
We'll come to that separately because I have my own theories.
Okay, so why do we have people decided that if you are sedition, you are for George Weah, you are from Southeast, you are a tribalist, you believe you want to vote for your son, or you're from this region, this is the candidate that you are going to vote for. It does not matter what people told you. We call those the sins. So there's the sins, that the sinners, and that those on the fence in the middle. The sins are those who will vote for you. I don't care what other people say about you or do. They may even offer them $1 million. They will not vote against you. On the other hand, the sinners are those who would not vote for you. I don't care how much you offer them. So candidates are looking for that middle tier, that tiny set of those who are undecided, who are somewhat on the fence, or who are issues voters. Now they've been offended by some message or the lack of message or somewhat. That is where you're going to be able to maximize your win number. You're seeking that middle tier. So people decided that the way things look, it looks like, I'm going to vote for Mr. Boakai against President Weah because, and they had their reasons. And the incumbent wanting to go back to office, went around the country, whatever they did, their resources, and they say, listen, you got to put President Weah back, and those who are seditious and who support the president and the people around him say, we got to fight for the president to go back. Now, in that, and also remember, you have 19 other candidates plus the president, and that's about 20 candidates. So the slate was really large, okay? And this was a general election as well. So you had a voter contending with roughly 50 or 40 somewhat, trying to sort out all these candidates to vote for up and down the ballot, representative and senators, and then the presidential candidates. So this was a long slew of candidates list that you had to contend with.
Right.
And the process was also confusing on election day. So taken together, you had a situation where people just try to figure, you know what, I'm a Boakai person, I know I want to vote for this person for president. I'm a Weah person. I want to vote for this person for president, and then look for my other candidates I want to vote for. In my view, it boiled down to those two candidates deciding not to, quote unquote, waste their vote because in the view of the voter, if the voter for Gonglo or Mr. Cummings, based on their perception of success probability, they choose out of those two candidates, which is why we're seeing the results the way we are seeing it.
Thank you. Let me go to Mr. Kane. Mr. Kane, as we've seen, the NEC has counted 99.97% with Weah and Boakai coming, 43.84 and 43.43. The rest of the candidates, 2.2, the third, 1.9, 1.6, and so on and so forth, right? So my question to the rest of them, why is that? But mainly is like, are they saying, well, the country is divided into two. You either for the president or against the president. So everyone for the president, go for the president. Everyone against the president, go for the opposition. And since they have been crying for a united opposition, which was not given to them, they decided to create their own one, opposition. And also the fact that there is no, in other elections, we have this thing about base, like Prince Johnson, maybe I will vote for him no matter what. Bromskin, or the late Councillor Bromskin, Grand Bassa went for him no matter what. Is it that we didn't have someone like that in this race? Is that why? Is that why?
So in these elections, there are a lot of things that actually went on. And these are not things that happen over a period of one day. they've been over the past 6 years. A lot of factors have been changing, which have actually reflected in the results that we have. One of those is the issue that you highlighted. We no longer have Councillor Bronsky, which now puts Basa up for grabs. We no longer have Prince Johnson. So the votes in Nimba, they decided where they wanted to go. Cummins, in the sense that the way we expected him to perform, he did not actually perform to expectation. So there's a reconfiguration of all of these bases. One of the things that happened was the midterm elections. When President Weah won election, they took a long time to actually celebrate because of the massive way that he actually won the second round election. So there was always this thought that the CDC stronghold was Monserrado County. That was tested in the midterm election when CDC lost Monserrado County. CDC then turned their attention from Monserrado County to the Leeward counties. This is where Thomas Fowler emerged. You saw Nathaniel Magay putting a lot of resources into Bond County, Bill Tuawe building houses in Riverside County. So the CDC essentially was looking for a base outside Monserrado. And at that point in time, Prince Johnson was still supporting them. When Prince Johnson, close to the end of 2022, withdrew his support from the CDC then decided to retreat back to Monserrado. So a lot of resources, a lot of auxiliaries are in Monserrado. They are working for the president. So you see all of these top counties, there's a huge battle going on there. Even though the CDC, Prince Johnson does not support them, but they fought as hard as possible to still be able to maintain a considerable share of votes in Nimba County. So like Ahmed said, this has been a huge competition. And I think this is where the resources have actually played a role in the favor of the current government. You saw the statement that the EU put out on campaign finances, that the president actually used state resources to the disadvantage of other political parties. So when you look at all of these resources, the economy is hard, but the ruling party putting in a lot of resources actually gave them some huge share of the vote. And also what they got from the Leeward counties. There are some communities outside Monrovia who have not seen that kind of resources going there. Foya, for instance, building roads. The people don't want to know how the resources were gotten. Just want to see the things that are happening. So I think it's a competitive race, and this is why you see how the two of them are neck to neck. And in the end, because this is a referendum on President Weah, it's almost a binary choice. It's either you want Weah to remain or you want him to go. So this is why he and Boakai are at the top, and then the rest of the people are in the 12% or maybe 13%.
Thank you. So the issue of base that I was telling you, is it because, I mean, when they first asked Mr. Cummins about base, it was, looked at differently. Is it because Cummins and the rest of the people don't have base? Is that why?
I think you guys have almost 2 or 3 programs have discussed Mr. Cummins. I'm still like trying to actually come up with some reasons why he performed the way he performed. I said previously that in 2017, I do think that many of the people who supported Mr. Cummins were these urban middle-class people who are educated. Many of my friends from university lean towards him. And that is a group that will assess you and criticize you because of the decisions that you make. Mm-hmm. And along the way, you can see that he started to change from being this person who has come to change the system to actually collaborating with people who are on the ground and people have some problem with. And when he was in Canada, for instance, when he was asked that question, his response was that you can't clap with one hand. So that essentially meant that you had to meet the people halfway. And so these people who are rational in the sense they are following you, they follow your message. When you start to slip, you start to think that this guy is not the kind of person we thought he is. And in many instances, there were certain things that he did in his campaign push. To me, if you look at it logically, it doesn't hold true. So for instance, let's look at the issue of entitlement. Their major campaign against Ambassador Boakai was that he feels entitled, that he has to be president. But who feels more entitled? Like you are out for a certain time and you come back in and you say, give me the presidency. To me, I think you feel more entitled. It's almost like you own the football in the community where you are playing with your friends. When your mom calls you, you go and eat, you come back and you say, put one person down, I have to come in and play because this is my football. So I think in that sense, Mr. Cummings felt a little more entitled. And then all of the issue with Musa Belete, with Louis Brown, every time people said about it, they said, don't worry. When Mr. Cummings become president, he will control these people. Don't worry about it, he will control them. But that argument could not hold for other people. So I think there was just a lot of these slipages that he slipped along the way. And also the middle class that was supporting him are the ones that are suppressed under this government. Businesses are not doing well. Professional people cannot get things to do. So I think people just say, I mean, we love you. We think you have the capacity, but at this point in time, we just need to be able to get Weah out. This is where he lost a really large number of his votes. And every time people talk about base, he said, no, I don't need a base. The Liberian people are my base. The young people are my base. But in the end, the people did not vote that way.
Thank you. I know Gabriel want to respond, but let me move to the Appon effect. There have been a lot of theories about Mr. Appon. I mean, the guy can dance. I saw him in his video as number one. First of all, a brother of mine who eats, sleep, and drink psychologist said, well, the positioning is great, right? Because it's at the top. He said, take, for instance, a Google search. If you search in Google, you're most likely to take the top one.
Yep.
So people who didn't know would take number one, which is Appon. Number two, we have some are saying from the Cummings side, they say, well, Ellis Cummings, Alexander C. Gunty, Ellis Gunty. So people took the vice president of Appon to be Ellis Cummings. That's one theory. Others say Boakai. People are taking the Boakai vote and giving it to Appon. My reporter was in Banga, and he said what he witnessed was they have trained the people. He saw 2 or 3 persons complaining after they came out. They have trained the people to say, well, if you go vote number 2, meaning vertically, when the people went in the booth, they were voting number 2 horizontally. So Appon is number 1, Gunty is number 2, and so they will mark that, and that was to them that was number 2. So those are some of the reasons people are giving for the Appon effect. Dr. Duke, are you hearing us as well? You have some problem here. So let me start with Mr. Salivier. What and others say, well, he canvassed his campaign and that's his vote. What's your take on the Appon effect? Why Mr. Appon is the third in these elections?
Well, a number of factors, and you've outlined some of them. I tend to agree with your psychologist brother who talked about the sequence of arrival, just sort of that mentor. Number one, there's confusion. You get in the voting booth, it's very chaotic. People stood long lines all day.
About 60 candidates.
60 candidates you have to sort out. And if you were like my grandmother who didn't go to school at all, couldn't read, and really was active and wanted to vote, you're asking her to do things that she wouldn't know how to sort out. So the easiest thing for her would have been just to pick number one and look for her daughter or son who comes from her area where she wants to vote for. They will say, you see, the person will be wearing hair tie, and they will put on print there and they'll vote. So I think the Appon, the number one positioning was advantageous to Mr. Appon. That's one. The other theory is, and I've resisted really dabbling into this because I do not have any evidence. At the same time, we're talking about an African election in a country that is what it is, that we all know, right? If you look at the turnout, and those who study elections will tell you a massive turnout is not good for the incumbent. It sends a message. The people are resolved. They're resolute. They're voting against something. They're not necessarily voting for this other person that they may be choosing. So it may not have been a vote for Boakai. It was rather a vote against Mr. Weah, President Weah. Okay. Now, if you have that happening, and you have an election commission as we do, look, anything is possible, right? I mean, anything is possible. And if anything is possible, one theory that I have been hearing, and people say, look, the Unity Party people, they didn't demonstrate such sophistication. So, for example, they came and had a history press conference, but they didn't really back it by some evidence to say, look, here are the tally sheet. We got everything from all these precincts and these polling stations all around the country. Now, we will be tallying, we will be putting some sort of results out of our own, at least signaling to the election commission, to the government, that we know what we're doing. We know what you have. We have people everywhere, right? If you didn't have that, the election commission and the government saw that Unity Party was more, they were posting on Facebook, and they were making a lot of noises, but they weren't showing any evidence. They weren't exuding some kind of technical information to show everybody else that these people have everything that we have, that the election, all the valid signed and official tally sheets, they weren't showing all that. Remember the blue plastic bag sort of thing that was trending on Facebook, right?
Yeah.
So what have people been telling me? Look, these are Boakai votes that the election commission is under pressure to now call this thing a one-round victory for Mr. Boakai, because under a lot of government pressure, and therefore the least they can do is push it to the second round. How do you push it to the second round? You reduce the other person's vote, and you make sure that you have something to send people to the second round. Whatever happens in the second round happens in the second round. Again, as I said, look, that is a wild sort of allegation and a theory that we've all have been hearing, and people tell us.
Mr. Selly, how would that give the giant share, or for the lack of a better word, to Appleton?
Well, how would that's the very reason why it would, because again, what you want to do is, you want to reduce your opponent's votes so that your opponent has something in the margins of yours. In that respect, you're able to push them to a second round competition one-on-one. And then whatever happens there, happens there. That is theory that no one can prove, but it has been lingering out there. We're talking tough on Tough Talking Thursday. We should as well put it out there, right? But again, let's leave that and assume the Appon votes were legitimate votes, that Mr. Appon went out campaign. I've seen several videos since he became very famous, right? Where he seems very approachable. He seems to be relating with the people and to the people. He's in the crowd. He's having conversations. He's attending church services. It seems to be a person who is very approachable, like one who can do get out the vote and really ground game. I don't know how sophisticated or organized his campaign was, but we cannot just dismiss this person who got them. That my father used to say, if somebody is in a meeting or an office in an organization, something brought them there. So don't dismiss that, right? They're a legitimate candidate on the ballot. Some accomplishment of theirs brought them thus far. And so they probably worked hard, participated in the debate, we saw in the Banga debate, and got some votes, plus all the advantages we've listed.
Thank you. Mr. Kana, even if we took Appleton vote and give it to Mr. Cummings, he's still below 5%. It's not where he was the last time, 7%. Or if we give that to Mr. Boakai, he's still not winning first round, right? What do you think account? And I want to throw in, because Mr. Salif mentioned it, this whole tally sheets thing, by especially the Unity Party, that we have the tally sheets. Now, the election results have been announced with 99.9% complete. Are they saying, does the number they have jive with what the NEC put up? Was this just a strategy to bully the NEC, or just a big bluff? Today I was thinking about it. I said, but what were they doing? Everybody claimed to have had tally sheets. What happened?
So, on the Appleton issue, for me, when I don't have facts, I just say I'm researching further.
Yeah.
It's difficult to actually develop a theory around this, because if we say that the votes that Appleton got were votes for JMB, then we are basically saying that Unity Party did not have the tally sheets. Because if they had the tally sheets, then they should be, because these are more than 40,000 votes.
Yes.
That puts him ahead of Ako. So this is now 1,000 votes. We have already had some instances where in some places they say, okay, somebody got 60 and then the NEC workers put 1 in front of the 6 to make it 160. So these are isolated cases. So if Appleton got into that place not because of people actually voting for him, it has to be a massive kind of undertaking for him to be able to do that. And if it is big enough, then we should be able to notice it. So till now, I think the only thing I can lean towards is the issue of him being number 1. Maybe some people, when they wanted to vote for number 2, they voted for number 1. All of that, I can lean into that argument, but not to say that the vote he got are not actually people who intended to vote for him. Again, it is difficult to believe because outside the debate, I really did not see him. I saw the debate in Monserrado, but again, there wasn't a popular focus on the debate for the fact that the 3 top candidates were not even there. Mr. Weah was not there. Former Vice President JMB was not there. Mr. Kumi was not in the debate. So it was just a debate of the lower tier. Tiawan Gongolo was there. I think Dr. Moniba was there. So again, if we say that he got all of that by presenting a platform that people bought into, and yet people did not listen to it, then it becomes difficult to be able to agree. So I think, like the Mr. Cummings factor, we just need to research this further. But I think Appleton will be tested in the second round because I think a day or so ago, I posted that he might be in a state where he's very confused. Because if he does not know where those people who voted for him are, how does he negotiate to support in the second round? Because people will obviously come to him. And then he will be looking around to say, where do I go? Because you don't know where these people are. Did they vote for you from Maryland, from Lofa, from other places? Who are the stakeholders that you even get in contact with to talk to them and say, this is the side that we are going? So, I mean, elections have surprises. Maybe Appleton happens to be the biggest surprise of 2023. I think with time, we try to really analyze what actually happened. But up to now, to me, it's just a shock.
And why this bluff from the Unity Party, and I'll call it that way, were they trying to bully the NEC? Because they told us we have our tally sheets. So by now, I'm expecting Unity Party at least take 1 precinct where you are assuming or where you think Appleton got your vote and match that with the tally sheet. They don't have tally sheets and they try to mislead us or do what?
No. The point with Appleton, this is why I'm saying I don't want to buy into the argument that he did not get those votes. The point I'm coming. The point with the Unity Party is that it is not only Unity Party, even the CDC. All of the political parties were behind the NEC. And then it doesn't make sense if you set up a war room, you are going to collect data and analyze it. You have to be a step ahead of the NEC so that when the NEC makes a mistake, you can be able to identify it and correct it. But if you are going to be second to the NEC, then just wait for the NEC to announce the result. But even the ruling party, and this is where I was a bit shocked, the only thing the CDC could put out was a map with green and blue colors, no numbers. So I think all of these political parties were behind the NEC.
I want you to comment on Unity Party, because it was Unity Party that took the blue plastic bag and said, we have the tally sheets here.
This is what I'm saying. Why Unity Party
will do that? Because most of the time we suspect the NEC to be in the pocket of the incumbent. So we are expecting more from the Unity Party to have these tally sheets and compare the results.
This is what I'm saying. The Unity Party, the tally sheet you saw with DeLong was a sample. It was not the entire population. And the Unity Party kept highlighting some issues. Every time the NEC announced the result, you hear them say, oh, today you did not announce Gbapolo, because they were very sure that they are higher in Gbapolo. Oh, today, why didn't you announce Cape Mount? Because they knew they were ahead of Cape Mount. But in terms of totality, in terms of actually, because when the election ended, the Election Commission takes time. All of the ballot, all of the records of count, it will have to be collected from the polling places and congregated to the magisterial offices, 19 that we have in Liberia, before the NEC can start to analyze them, to group them together. But for you as a political party, people take pictures of these things and screenshot them and send them to you. So you have to be a day or two ahead of the NEC. I think the Unity Party was slow in actually gathering and analyzing, so the NEC was like a bit ahead of them. But these tally sheets were real ones, but they were actually a sample.
But do they have them? Do they have all the tally sheets? Or the live?
Definitely.
Gabriel,
no, definitely. That? Eventually they had it.
Well, I think Dr. Moluba actually did cover this probably 2 days ago, and I think one of the discrepancy that we've left out with this whole tally sheet is that the tally sheet that is the tally sheets that are taken at the polling stations takes time. I think Kane actually alluded to that. To get to the next, whatever they actually they reconcile the votes, right? So if these candidates or their so-called strategists are taking pictures of those tally sheets that are done at the polling station, and those tally sheets are now packaged and brought to the next, you know, reconciliation center or wherever they're actually reconciled, there's a high chance, there's a higher probability that whatever's on those tally sheet could vary from what actually the NEC puts out. So by using these tally sheets to rally a vote to say, oh, we won in this county, it's just another way of inciting, you know, this kind of, you know, advantage over your opponent. But those tally sheets should not have been taken as face value, you know, that they actually reflect the actual voting that, you know, what the NEC will actually put out, right? Another thing that I said in a conversation is that we have the country we have as it is. En route, they could take those tally sheets en route to the next center. Anything can happen in between there. Votes could be added, tally sheet could be votes could be added, things could be added and subtracted. So by taking the tally sheets pictures at the polling station and using that as if those are actual evidence that you actually won, I think it's just a psychological game to over the opponent, but it shouldn't. We should not.
Gabriel, my question is, even if you are using them at face value, but now you should be able to compare them to what NEC has, right? And see where the discrepancies lie. But we need, that's why I'm asking whether the UP was trying to bully the NEC. I'm using that word intentionally.
I think not just them, they started it, but I think every political party was doing that as well. That they have
the CDC. I didn't hear that from other political parties. So here are our tally sheets.
Right. I think it was. I think that what they were trying to do is hold NEC feet to the fire, hold them to the account. But I think there could have been a better way they could have gone about that, as opposed to just taking tally sheet. Like I always tell people, we are a rebirth democracy and we're a fragile country, regardless of what you want to say. You know, we're a fragile country. There's evidence of that the 2 days leading up to the election. By doing that, by you telling your supporters that you actually won the election, technically that you won, you know, and NEC, what if NEC came out and said, contrary to what you were putting out on the tally sheet? That would have incited a lot of people, right? And in as much that I thought they were trying to hold NEC feet to the fire, to hold them to account, to make sure that, hey, these are the preliminary numbers we're getting from these polling stations. Make sure that, you know, you don't do anything fishy on the way from those polling stations to your counting stations and whatever numbers you put out. There could have been a better way to go about that. And this is where I put the onus on the political parties, on the candidate themselves. If you see your voters doing stuff like that, where it's getting out of hand, where you're getting out of hand, you really, like, to use a word, they're bullying, you know, NEC to that extent. You're supposed to come out to exercise a little bit of calmness. You know, hey, I understand you have your democratic rights, but do so cautiously. You don't want to take it too far to incite violence in a country that is very fragile. So I think they were trying to hold them to account, but they took it a little bit too far.
What do you make of the Appon effect? Because earlier
Dennis,
you
can
said,
I make a
one second. Earlier you said that was Cummings' vote that were given to Appon. Go ahead, make your question.
So, yeah, I haven't been here for long.
They kind of I think kind of want to come. Oh, yes, I can land.
I don't think we should.
Land.
I wanted to make a quick point, Gabriel.
Gabriel can finish, and then we go to Dr. Duke.
One quick point, Gabriel. The point you are making that when election is over, these ballot boxes take time to get to the magisterial offices, and anything can happen in between there. If anything happens, the political parties should be able to notice, because at the end of the elections, when the reconciliation is done and the counting is done, before the ballot boxes are put into the ballot box, there is a serial number. They log these ballot boxes, and the serial numbers are given to the political parties. Say this ballot box in this polling place, we are locking it with serial number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So when you go to the tally center and the ballot boxes are being opened, your political party representatives are there, they should carry those serial numbers. If the serial number that was used to log that ballot back changes, then you should not accept it. You should say that there was a problem with this ballot box. So if any of that happens and the political parties let it go, there is actually on them because everything is systematic.
Right. Okay. I will leave it on. I had a response for that, but I'll leave it on it.
Okay, can I come in now? Everybody, I have
Doug, just give me 1 minute. Let me.
I've been here sitting down, going in and out. But I'm not going to say anything much really about this Appleton, and I think we should.
Doug, just give me. So, let me be honest with you here. As far as I will admit, I'm an ANC supporter, right? I think.
Okay, then I'm going to go out. If he talks what I'm talking, then I'm going to get out.
I lied you. Okay.
You just spoke.
Now, please go ahead. Please go ahead. Okay, go ahead. Go ahead, please. I beg you. Doc, go ahead.
No, I'm waiting for Dennis to tell me to go ahead. He's the host.
Go ahead, Dr. Douglas.
No, but I'm just trying to say that, I think we're wasting a lot of time on this with this. Okay, thank you. I'm trying to say that we're spending too much time building up and then working ourselves into conspiracy theories that we cannot prove, that they have no standing, we don't have facts. And it's like we're wasting our time and wasting people's time, people who are listening to us, because we have no facts about what happened. We don't know. None of the political parties came up and said, this is what we found that happened to put this man at this level. They're just making noise. They say, okay, NEC didn't do its job. This was wrong, and this is what happened. And you approve, a political party can prove it, then we talk about it. But the rest is just blah, 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 blah. We're not making sense because we're just building conspiracy theories. We say, next should have done this, next should have done this, next should have done that. Yes, but that's the political party's job, to keep NEP on its toes. You don't let them get away with things like that. If you don't do it, you don't complain after the elections. When we talk about Appleton being number one, there was no voter samples. There was no ballot sample given to nobody. So no political party had a chance to tell their people, this is where we are, this is the number we are at, this is where you spend. Everybody went with their fingers. At least those who can fit on one hand or two hands. So they accepted to go to election without having a chance to do voters election, education. They went to election without a final registry. As Dennis, you said it last week or 2 weeks ago. You said it's like somebody invited you to a game to his house, and he provided a ball to the referee, and he said you got to come, but you don't bring no substitute, and you still go there and play, and you lose, and then you complain. I'm sorry, man, guys. Conspiracy theories. If you have issues with a commission, take it with a commission. If you don't have issues, let's not build conspiracy theories. The man won his 2.1% or 2.3%. Nobody saw him coming. That happened in every marathon. It happens in every marathon that run in the world. Except if you're from Kenya and Ethiopia, people say, okay, we accept him to win, but other people just pop up.
So thank you, Dr. Du, and definitely that's why it's not a waste of time, right? Because you have just provided reason why Mr. Appleton got the 2.1% he got. You said it happens in elections. It happened in marathon. People come from the back and win. And Dr. Du, my second question is this whole idea of tally sheets. Why, the tally sheets, are you telling me that these political parties really don't have tally sheets and they were just bluffing, especially the Unity Party and the CDC? Or are they saying the tally sheets they have agree with what the NEC put out, even though they told us that based on our tally sheets, we have this, we have that, and we have won first round straight up? What type of strategy was that?
Yeah, but that's their own calculation. No, but if everybody about those things like that. I mean, Donald Trump is going to die
Mr.
saying
Dugo,
there is
your audio is kind of very,
this
your audio is bad.
tendency to make your aspiration look. Yeah, I know. That's what I have problem getting you guys. So I'm going to turn it off and go back in.
Right.
If
Maybe use the computer or so. So, Mr. Salif, I want you to talk about the tally sheets, and I'm very particular about this because we were so certain that these people were telling us the truth.
Mm-hmm. So I think Kane alluded at that earlier, and again, because we don't have all the facts, we're not on the ground to be in those war rooms or be so clothed with the authority to speak authoritatively. All I can say is, as a technical person, you know, like I think we all have, Mr. Carter said as well, you have to be able to preempt. You have to be able to demonstrate that you are ahead of NEC. And here's how you are ahead of NEC. I have, because everything is systematized, right? You have pool watchers, you have political party representatives inside the polling spot where people are coming to vote. They have their privacy, they go in the secret and cast the ballot. But when it comes time to count or to, you know, take account of what happened there, you have election observers, local observers, international observers, political party representatives. There are all kinds of people. There's a system in place. Everybody will see the tally sheet. They'll, you know, make sure that this is signed, political party representatives sign, NEC people sign, everybody signs it. That's where some people will screenshot and taking pictures and stuff. And that's where you took the picture and file it to your war room, to your party's headquarters. So they had it at precinct A in polling spot. This has already voted, and here's a total, here's a picture of the tally sheet. I was shocked too that they had a plastic bag because I was assuming actually they will say they have digital copies of the tally sheet. There are people took pictures, and we got some carbon copies, yes, but most of it, people took picture, they send it right away, instantly. And you have data people sitting there looking at our raw data coming in. They're doing some analysis, they're running some numbers, they're looking at trends and making projections among themselves to prepare for any abnormalities that they will see NEC or I don't know, maybe another party trying to do something, particularly NEC, and then we say, no, this is not consistent. This does not sound like the same number that we have, and we should have the correct one, just as you do, because our representatives are there, right? So then they come and make this, big show that, look, we have the tally sheet. I give you a typical example. Look at District 8, where Prince Tolls and Akaras Gray, okay? Prince Toll did something that, to me, should have been the model. He spoke with evidence. He said, look, we have our people, our pool washers, our representatives at all these polling places. Here's the number they sent to us. And it was signed and official. Next, you have this exact number. If NEC has this exact tally sheet, then we will be ahead 176 votes. Okay, how can you argue that? There was somebody who was trying to cheat for Mr. Gray and put a 7 in front of the number. They cut that. But this guy was vocal. He was on air. He was on social media with evidence. He kept waving this tally sheet, did number. You called a number, actually. That's what Unity Party people should have been doing. Even the CDC people too say, look, our numbers indicate this is why we have based on the tally sheet.
Even the comments people that claim that.
Even the comments people themselves as well, because that's what they should have been doing, so that they will be predicting, they'll be looking at trend. They will know if their candidate should have performed well at this polling spot, precinct, and NEC is reporting otherwise, or there's some other projection being made, and they'll say no. But look, Mr. Cummings came and made a statement, but he didn't really cite any specific evidence. He said, look, we were not happy with the numbers we saw and that kind of thing. It was more general, right? So coming back to the Unity Party people, I can sit there and say they didn't have all the tally sheets, but they didn't demonstrate to us either. that they had everything. They were on top of it. And they were ahead of NEC. They could go and catch any error or any evidence of fraud or otherwise. So it's just all I don't know. I wouldn't say some kind of bluff, but they.
So I have a question for you guys.
And you won't use my term that they try to bully the NEC either. You won't use that.
No, I wouldn't use that. I mean, NEC, you can put whole NEC's feet to the fire to say, look, you got to do it this way. Yes, that way. Yeah, but I don't think it was a bully. They were just saying, basically, we're watching you. We have the evidence.
No, that's something. You can say that, but you are telling me that you have the evidence. You have the papers, even though you are not telling us. You are telling me, hey, at this polling station, 20 of our people voted, but we have 0. You can tell us the polling station. You didn't tell us who voted. You can give us the tally sheet from that place.
The technical mistake happened because
it's not a mistake. This is deliberate lie.
It was intentional. It wasn't a mistake. It was intentional.
Okay, so this is where also you're exuding. It's about perception too, right? Like you said, Mr. Carter, maybe it was a mind game, right?
Yeah, it was. I think it was.
The thing is, if you say you have a war room and you're trying to hold NEC accountable, let you know that all the parties that have representatives at all the polling places have access to the same tally sheet that were reported at the 19 magisterial district offices that then ultimately were analyzed at the NEC headquarters in Cinco, right? So that it was okay for the party to say, look, we have it. Here's what we have. But you come and scream that you have a tally sheet, you have the tally sheets, and therefore you have the numbers, you understand the trend, you know that you are leading, and you can demonstrate, you can show. I think that if it was a strategy, it was a bit disingenuous.
That takes me to the NEC. How did the NEC do? Really? And I wanted to spend at least a minute each on how did the NEC do. Before I start that, I want to play a tape from yesterday that I watched of the NEC boss, David Brown. Take a listen. I was watching this and there were many reactions. So I want to get your reactions on this.
I just want to tell you hello first, yeah. The voter / power by Oman sitting here. And today I didn't bring my other wig. Nobody will shoot out anybody. And you or me. So understand, right? But if my wig fall out from my head, then that different story.
Yes, that's right. It is. What are you saying?
Let me tell you the truth. I got home like 3 days ago, and my children, as soon as I opened the door, my children said, "Oh, man," I said, "What happened? That hair on your head?" Then people said, "It's going."
I think just watching too much social media, Facebook.
Yeah. I was watching that. Somebody said, well, this is not funny. This is a very crucial election. Why is she making light of it and joking? And somebody said, well, it has been so tense. In fact, people were asking her, why are you so stressed? Some of the journalists we're asking her, and so she tried to lighten things up. How did the NEC do? And what do you make of that video, Thomas?
I think maybe this is going towards the end. But the way I have watched the chair of the commission is that it's often the case that she's battling the journalists.
Yeah.
When they ask a question, I saw somebody posting in, the person was saying that the way you responded to the BBC journalist, that wasn't fair. She wants to respond to a journalist to actually subdue the person. And if you try that with the media, they are going to come back and also make sure that they want to subdue you. So every time there was a little mistake now where they needed to call 577, they called 557, the media will come back and raise the issue. So along the way, there has actually been a difficult engagement with she and the media. So I think that was a very good way to be able to reduce that tempo and to be able to calm down the situation. Also, when the country is very tense, if she brings in that kind of humor to be able to reduce the tension, I think that was very good. But from the beginning and the way that I have been looking at her responding to journalists, it was bad. In terms of the overall management of the elections, our electoral process is such that in 2005, our election was basically conducted by the international community. On may help us conduct that election. From 2005 to 2011, the Liberians gradually started to take over the management of the elections. These days, the projects that you see around election are mostly technical assistance projects. EU provides money, USAID provides a project and all of that, but the actual management of the process is done by the Liberians. So we can see that there are some improvement, but the way they manage the issue of the biometric voter registration, how that procurement went through, there was a lot of noise around it. And then their timetable too. They kept coming up with timetable and then they will come back and change the timetable. The issue of their communication with the public was not that forthcoming. Even when the election started, it was very later on that they started to have these weekly press conferences. So the NEC was not really forthcoming with public information. The other issue is the issue of the civic education. I don't think the net really did well with civic education. I think it's a talking point. I don't know whether you guys discuss it. We'll discuss it further. So in the end, we are where we are, but there were some challenges the election commission faced. The other reaction I have seen from people is that even they struggle to call numbers and they are struggling to pronounce names. And people are saying, but you are a Liberian. These people are Liberians. Regardless of where they are from, you should be able to pronounce their names. And there were a lot of errors they made, and then they will come back tomorrow and say, okay, we'll rectify that. That was a human error. So they had their own challenges, but in the end, I mean, we can say these are Liberians conducting our own elections, but they have some limitations going into this, and then they can work on those as they move forward.
And the Akaros Great District that they didn't announce for like 2 days. But what was that all about?
I think that, and this is where the election commission needs to be careful with these kind of things because it then raises suspicion. It is not only the Accra's Great District, but I was following the election also in Maryland County because the person who beat Buffer's Chamber is a classmate of mine. And he always kept posting that Buffer's Chamber was going into the tally center consistently. And the question is why? This is raising credibility issues around the election. So Gray goes to an election. You have all of these issues. Prince Toll highlighted the issue that on the night of election, they were telling them because people wanted to stop them from actually having access to those tallies or the record of count. When they move across the district, they managed to get it. And then when it came to the announcement, it was like slow. They arrested people and put them in jail. In such a situation, you need to prioritize that district, go as fast as possible so that you can be able to get rid of all of those rumors. Because the more it was kept in suspense, the more Akawas Gray was saying he has won, and Prince was saying, here is my evidence. So District 8 became just confusing until the election result was actually announced yesterday. So I think these are things that the Election Commission needs to work on better as we move forward.
Thank you. Gabriel, some were saying, incompetent versus outright cheating and all that. How did the NEC do?
To be honest, I think there was what I want to call incremental improvements. Initially, when they started, they were horrible. I think we can all admit to that. They were, the reporting, they were behind on reporting. And again, this is why I said what I said earlier, that, the United Party putting out the tally sheet, even though I didn't like the way they did it, because in a way it kind of held NEC feet to the fire that, there's a lot that is riding on you on your decisions, and you should do the right. They should do the right thing. But from the beginning, I think they were, I don't. And again, this is all we're humans. Maybe that was her first time. I think that's, if you guys can keep me honest here, that was probably her first time conducting election, right? So this is somebody who's never, right. This is somebody who's never been in the press, who doesn't know what to. So it's you could see the tension there from the beginning. But as we continue to, this tally sheet coming out, people are, questioning them, the way they're going about things, they begin to improve. And it's eventually when you got to the end, you can see what she kind of lightened up a little bit, what she humanized herself. That hey, these are the tension that I'm under. These are the tension that I'm under. When I leave from here, I go home. My children feel that, right? So I think for us, in as much that I think that from the beginning they didn't do that well, I think there was a little bit of improvement, gradation
Right.
in their processes
And what do you
as
think is
well.
responsible for that? Was it because the political party pressure, the international observer, or
I
other
think
big arms saying, "Hey, we know what you're doing"? What
no,
do you think happened?
I don't think it was more about the international community. I think it was more from the opposite, the voters. Like we were doing on social media. Everybody were questioning the lady, not just her, but the neck. Neck doesn't know what they're doing, and it's true. I don't think they understood what they were doing. And I think they kind of took some of those criticism and kind of, in a way, did better eventually, but I don't think that criticism came from the other international party like AU and those other party. I think it directly came from Liberians, voters wanting their election process to go a certain way, and they being in power don't know how to conduct the election because that was her first time there. But she actually, I think the whole staff actually took advice and I can I can ridicule her for from the beginning, but I think to be human, you have to give her a little bit of grace in her process. That's her first time
Thank you.
doing that. That's her first time doing that. We have to give her kudos wherever it's due. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Salif. How did the night do?
Well, I think Gabriel and Thomas have sort of temper my caution us to be human. But I thought they did horrible. I mean, it was an international. It was I call it national embarrassment at international proportion. The world is watching us. The world press is there. Liberian, it's just how they manage everything. The optics of things, her interaction with the media. She has a journalism background, I learned, right? So you would
Yeah.
thought that she would be somewhat sympathetic, understand that reporters are just there doing their job. I mean, this is a very crucial election. And the whole country is on edge. The country was so quiet. I mean, radio silence. Across the people are listening and waiting. And there they were pronounced names Liberian towns, of Liberian villages, Liberian districts. I don't care you from Cape Town or Maryland or where, you should be able to pronounce or know the names of
My
towns
sound
and
is not working.
everywhere around the country. You
And
can't.
you should practice
You
if you
should
don't know
practice.
it.
Yeah, if you don't know it, it's unfamiliar to you. You'll be on national television, international. Now with social media, ubiquitous. You are everywhere instantaneously, man. You should know that I have to be at my best. And maybe that's their best. They pass it to one commissioner. They're struggling to read a name. They read a number. They come back. Somebody says to them, "Oh, they're doing even better. That commissioner is doing better with this one. Midterm, it was
But,
even terrible. They did not read decimal. All of those. Okay, let's put those aside, right? I mean, human errors. Somebody under tension in front of the media, in front of the camera. They will make errors. There will be missteps, and they will improve
Right.
gradually over time. That's
Right.
fine. But if we went back and looked at the management of the election, like Thomas was saying, every step of the way there was strategic error. How they managed the biometric, the B, what's the BVR process?
Yeah.
How they abandoned that later on because they didn't pilot it, they didn't have time to pilot it, and all of that. Okay, how they didn't do CVE, civic and voter education, and the ensuing chaos that we saw on election day with the massive unprecedented turnout we saw. I mean, all of these things. This is the National Electoral Management Body. Look, I get it that OMIL help us manage our election. International bodies manage our elections for us, and gradually they hand it over to us, and now they're just giving technical support and so on. Maybe somebody will come and enlighten me and say, look, They didn't have all the resources. They didn't have all the budget support and things like that. At some point, I heard the government actually provided the money they were asking for. Although there was a delay, I do not have all of that fact. I'm just saying, as an observer, sitting and looking at everything, and then to when we went to election, how we went to election with certain things in place, and then of course the announcement process. That made you to imagine how is a collation and data analysis process happening behind the scenes? Because any number you bring to the public, this is clean up data that should have been tested, has been analyzed, been cleaned, and has gone through all kinds of dry runs, right? So that when you brought it to the public, this is the best of the best, and you're presenting it in the best manner possible. So I thought they really struggle to understand all of those processes and then bring them together, given the criticality of the election that we have at hand.
Can I say something real quick? Do you guys remember the press conference
Dr.
you made?
Duke. Hold on, Gabriel.
Okay.
No question from you.
Yeah.
But Dr. Dukley, because I want us to get to the runoff quickly. Dr. Dukley, what do you make of the net?
Yeah.
Dr. Duke, can you hear me?
Well, I think the NEC had to work with what he had. Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
No?
We're hearing you.
Yes.
So
No.
everybody's, you're live.
Okay.
We can hear you.
Okay, no, I'm saying I think NEC worked with what they had. If you remember, 6 months prior to this whole process, NEC was complaining about money.
Exactly.
That they didn't have money, they didn't have money to do this, they didn't have money to do that. And government was playing deaf ear to it. And I think that was, government sabotaged the election process, the electoral process. Money that was supposed to be there, 12 months ago was not there 6 months ago. Yeah. So everything came at the last minute. We were, people were even talking about, do we have to postpone the elections if they don't get the money? And they were talking about we don't have money for the second round if there is one. That was like two days before the election date. So if you want to blame somebody, really, I would say, okay, yeah, the technical issues that you both talked about, all of you talked about, are probably issues that we need to pay attention to down the line. But I think the government failed the electoral process. The government almost sabotaged the electoral process by not providing the funding that the election commission needed when he needed to do his work. Money that was needed 12 months ago was not there 6 months ago. So how do you work with that? You can't get people to say contracts were not signed because there's no money. I think you should put on Judge Weah, now on the election commission. I think they did the best they could with what they had. And I think, the technical problems we see can be ironed out, with more elections coming up. I'm sure if they had the money and there was no excuses that we couldn't do this, we couldn't print this, we couldn't even do the biometrics on time because there was no money and contracts being delayed, and then the problem with the 6PP and all of that, the 6PP or whatever, commission and all of that. So if you look at all the process that went on for the last 18 months, I'm not even talking about 12 months, because everybody knew election were going to happen on October 10th, except the government. They could send George Weah and 10 or 15, 20 people to go to Qatar for 47 days to watch the World Cup, but they couldn't fund the election commission. And that's a problem. We shouldn't, the technical problems are okay. We can all talk about that.
Yeah.
Maybe we are not used to funding our own election anymore. But Dr. Dugley, here's another point, right? Where I think there were two events that the election commission called the political parties. I forgot what those exactly were, but they were like, let's talk about this thing. Let's train you how the reporting and everything will be. And nobody turned out. Everybody was basic campaigning, right? So the political parties who also should be able to educate their voters, they didn't do it, right? do the political parties have a part to play here or share part of the blame?
I think no, they do. Yeah, they do have a part to play, but I would say again, it's all on the delay. Those things happen during the campaign process. You don't call political parties during the campaign. You call them 3 months before the campaign. You talk about issues, these issues. You bring security people. You bring every issue lawyers to talk to them 3-4 months before the campaign starts. But you don't call in the middle of the campaign and say, "Oh, let's talk about issues." It's too late, and that's because of the delay. And because of that delay, nothing could take place, as it should. Because you talk about the political parties meeting, you meet them 6 months, 3 months before the electoral process starts, before they get on the campaign, before they print anything. Say, this is the deadline, this is what we're going to do, these are the people we'll be working with, and da. We're going to do biometrics, but because we never use it before in our electoral system, we're not going to use it this time. We'll let it go on us as a system. And that was a genius approach by using paper ballots, because now we can still audit the electoral process. If they had used electronics, we'd be out of it with all these complaints that are going on. I think we should blame the government for withholding the funds, and which would undermining the constitutional work of the NEC. And NEC had to work with what he had.
And you should at the end of the show, we're going to see what improvement that are needed. Our next issue will be, now we're talking about runoff. What do we expect to happen going into the runoff, or the second round, as people like to call it? We want to look at the turnout, we want to look at the campaigning, this whole idea of pool washing. Maybe they will have tally sheets this time or no. Observers, whether there are going to be some actual debate, even if not debating to a place. But before we get into that, we're going to take a short cola break. When we come back from the cola break, you're going to answer the question about Tough Talking Thursday. Quickly, before we go into that big question, I just want us to throw in maybe two persons can respond to this whole invalid vote, right? And I wanted to spend just 5 minutes in invalid. Not that it's not important, but we have discussed this on another show. We have at least around 115,000 invalid votes. If you compare that, let me see, my sheet here is like a whole county did not vote. I don't know if we see that as disenfranchisement. Okay, there are some counties that the eligible voters for, that are, so if your county is 115, your total 115, that means the whole county was not able to decide who the next president will be. So the invalid votes, and what I want is, at least I want to see copies of these invalid votes, so I'll have an idea what really constitutes invalid voting and how we can fix that issue. Most of the time, like even from our national exam or Weah, we just hear pass, fail, 2,000 fail, 5,000 pass. But how have we been able to use that result to evaluate our curriculum and make improvement? Is always area we struggle. I believe the invalid vote issue should be the same way. Thomas, you work with most of these things now. What's causing the invalid votes, and how can we fix this?
So this is very interesting because when we say in democracy, one person, one vote, is to actually make sure that that one vote contributes towards the decision-making process. So everything that we do from the beginning of the electoral cycle to the end of the electoral cycle is to prepare that stage for people to go out and contribute to that decision-making process. And so when we go through the process and then you have people who go through everything that we've done and then they go and the vote does not count, it does undermine the decision-making process, and it is also a cost to the government. Because let's say, for instance, the entire election was around 50 million. That's the number I heard repeatedly from the Ministry of Finance. So if you divide that 50 million by 2.4 voters, the cost per voter, that is the money that we spend to educate the people, to set up the precinct, to hire people, and everything was around maybe $20 to $25 per voter. And if you multiply that 25 or $20 per voter for 100,000, that's a million, somewhere around $2 million that went into the electoral process, but eventually did not materialize to actually give us return. So it's very interesting, this invalid votes. Like you said, I'm really interested that before the election commission can discard of those votes, because there's a timeline within which I think these ballot papers will be discarded. It's good for us to be able to analyze them to see where the invalid votes are coming from. Are they coming from the interior? Are they coming from the urban areas? Are they aligned with age groups? Then that will inform us as to how to do civic and voter education in the future. Because the thing with CVE is that there are two things that are tied together. The civic part is to tell people that it's your right, go and vote. It's democracy, you need to participate. And then the V part is the voter education, which tells you the day of the election and how to mark your ballot paper. So if you don't mark it rightly, then we have a problem with the V part of the education. So I think this is where it's really important for us to analyze this. Is it coming from the first-time voters, many of whom are actually, before you reach 18 in the urban setting, you must have been in school or you are exposed. So is it the first-time voters that are making this mistake? Or is it people that have voted 2005, 2011, 2017 that are still making mistakes? So I think it's really good for us to analyze the invalid votes, for us to see what constitutes it and how we can avoid this in the future.
Thank you, Dr. Douglas. I want you to comment quickly because this number has increased since 2005. You know, it keeps going up. Now we have, and you can see it on the screen. So, and really, I want to even see whether the invalid vote is coming from the thumb or it's coming from the pen, or people just go there and just tear it up. What does invalid vote look like? And which one is more? Dr. Douglas, what do you make of the invalid votes? The numbers climbing.
Well, I think
actually, because that's if I can determine
you mark the wrong.
Say vote again.
Well, invalid vote could be a lot of things. Somebody could vote for Appleton and vote for Boakai at the same time. They say, I like Appleton, but Boakai, I want Boakai to be president too. So they vote for two persons.
I really want to see
that, that's an invalid vote. And somebody, instead of making a run, somebody make a run, how you mark it. You mark it, you look at the man face, you say, okay, I'm going to cross this man out. So, and then you go vote for somebody, say, no, I don't like Boakai, so I'm going to cross Boakai face, and then I go vote for Cummings. So therefore, you vote is on, so in the absence of voters' education, and we, I don't know, 20 to 30% of the kids who are voting for the first time in their lives, these things will happen. I think the best thing to do, and that would be probably an audit that the Election Commission could do internally, or the political party can complain. You have to lodge a complaint that you want to retrieve the ballots now, the results, and then have access to those ballots. But other than that, you just have to wait after the election, the electoral process, and then the Election Commission will look at it, or somebody who may request it on, and then say, we want to see this. But I don't think anybody has formally, complained that they want to know why there were so many bad ballots. And that the problem is just this. Again, it comes down to these facts. No voter education, no time to do it because the government withheld the funds to sabotage the electoral process.
And I learned there were not even sample ballots. How can you have election without sample ballots? But that takes us to the issue of runoff. Runoff will be. This time there's no gray area, there's no Appon, there's nobody else. It's just Boakai versus Cummings. So, Mr. Salif, let me start with you. What do we expect from this? I'm talking about when I say turnout, campaigning, poll watching, where you think these politicians going to go? What do you think they're going to be doing now, looking at elections? And I understand it's just 2 weeks.
Yeah, November 7th. So you said Boakai versus Cummings. You meant Boakai versus Boakai.
Oh, sorry.
Versus Weah. Look, runoff election is a very tough thing. It's very tight, both for the commission and for the voters, as well as for the political party candidates themselves. Why? Because a number of factors, particularly in our context in Liberia, some of these candidates down the ballot in the general attract voters across the country. Attract voters to Bapulu, to River System, Nimba, everywhere. And to register during the registration time, they retract them during the election time. Most of these people are from urban areas. They return home. They do not have any incentive to go back to those places to cast a ballot for the candidate, for the presidential candidate, and they can't vote where they are if they're in Montserrat or otherwise. That's number one major challenge. Number two, typically there's low turnout in runoff elections. So the enthusiasm that you saw in the general election, unless the Liberian voters prove us wrong this time around, yet again, because they're resolved, because they want to make sure the candidate wins, and therefore they'll turn out. We could see that because the general election, it was very unprecedented. So what should candidates do? Candidates will be crisscrossing the country. What does that mean? It means resources. So those who have the resources, the candidate who has the resources, this case two people, the candidate who has the resources of their own or access to state resources and they're so inclined to use public funds for their personal gain, they will go around the country. They will do what they would do in an African election. They will pay people, they will truck people, they will buy votes, they will do all kinds of things. Okay. And the final factor there that I've been thinking about is, so the challenge for the candidate is people who voted for you will vote for you if they came back to the pool, most likely, right? That is a good part. They will vote for you. What you're trying to do here is to reduce the other person's vote and increase your vote. That narrow in the middle. Again, given all the factors I've outlined, you're trying to, your messaging and your opposition research, whatever it is you're doing, you're trying to ensure that you discourage the other person's electorates or voters from voting for them or from going out, and increasing yours. It's because you're trying to close the gap. There's a margin there. You want to be ahead, and therefore you want more people to turn out to vote for you. You want to make sure those who need to get to places where they ought to be in order to vote for you get to those places. At the same time, you want to be able to encourage your GOTV, get out the vote has to be very, very paramount. And finally, your pool washers. Your representatives are every single polling place this time around. Those will be the major areas that I'll be paying attention to.
Gabriel, there's a Southeastern factor too in these elections. Mr. Boakai himself was not able to go to the Southeast. People always say this person won this county, which I don't like to use it that way because this is not electoral college. But for the sake of the argument, Mr. Boakai won Moserado, won Nimba, won Lofa, won Mangibi, but lost in the Southeast. And so we are won the popular vote, if I will still put it that way. Will Mr. Boakai be going to the Southeast this time, you think, or it doesn't matter?
That's a great question, Dennis. But if we were still in the first round, I would advise him to go there. But given where we are and the limited amount of time we have,
You can spend 8 days on the road, right?
yeah, exactly, exactly. I think Salif pointed that out. It's you have limited time. it- there's a high possibility there's limited resources, so you have to be very strategic, um, how you use them, right? So if I were him, contrary to, there's one point I want to disagree with Salif on here that I don't I don't think the second round should be about campaigning anymore. And I think he answered his own question, right? Because you've already those who voted for you will already vote for you. I think the biggest thing that we need to be focusing on here, or the candidates need to be focusing on, is strategy, right? Meaning that other candidates who fell out, the other, what is it, 18 candidates, those are the people that I'll be going out to, because you do not have the resources to canvas like you did in the first round. So your biggest advantage will now be able to get these supporters, the other candidates, to endorse you. That way, strategically, to increase your vote, because those who voted for you in the first round will already will vote for you. That's if they even have the time to turn out to the poll. I mean, uh, to go vote, right? The other thing on the poll watchers, right? It goes back to what we keep saying here: resource. I I want to believe that most of these candidates spend most of their resources in the first round. Now, with the exception of the president, because as we always say, he has the treasury at his disposal. Unfortunately, whether we want to agree with him or not, he can use it however he feels, right? So he has that little bit of advantage, right? Now, I'm not trying to undermine, the VP, the former VP's, you know, campaign resources, to say that he doesn't have it, but I believe he's, depleted most of his resources. So they have to think strategically of how they're going to deploy whatever little bit of resources they have left, right? Um, the the other thing I want to get to here is about, debate. I know you talked about debate there. I keep saying this thing here, and it's maybe again, I sound like a broken record here. We did not get a debate in the first round. At least they could have given us one debate, just one. Just give us one. You know, the first round, it was about crowd. I can pull this crowd. I can pull this crowd. It wasn't more about the, we always say the bread and butter issue, right? Um, Now this is the time to really differentiate yourself from the other person. Yes, you have proven that you can pull crowd in the first round. This is where you now differentiate yourself from your opponent, on ideologically, politically, on every measure, to say this is why this person I'm different from this person. One, second, this is what I'm going to do for the country. Right now, we are at this juncture. Right, this is how I'm better than this candidate, and this is what I'm going to do for the Liberian people. Um, so I
You
believe,
really think that's the time now?
I mean,
It looks like they got that message already, right?
it no,
Because I look at it like incumbent versus the former incumbent. So it's like, don't you think people are kind of settling their way? They're just a few in the middle who voted for other candidates that you're going to be. Do you
well,
really think they're going to be moved by messages?
you got to hone. Then it's not about. So look at it this way: you're not just appealing to your supporters anymore. So Weah has his supporters, the VP has a supporter. You are now appealing to the 18 other candidates, voters that are out there, the people who didn't vote for you. So
Right.
now this is right. So in order to sway them to your side, you can't use crowd anymore. The crowd game is done. So you have to use something that gives you the advantage, which is to differentiate yourself from that person. And
Thank
how are
you.
you going to do that? Right? And this is why I believe, if they had a message, this is where you hone it, you perfect it, you articulate it over and over and over. And most importantly, I keep saying this: be strategic. Campaign is done. There's not much time left to campaign. Reach out to all those other 18 candidates that drop out, and make sure that you get as much endorsement that you can get from them. But if you think that you're going to just go back again, go campaign and trying to win people over, you're just losing, you're wasting your time. Yeah.
Thank you. Dr. Dukley, we see that we have people who voted for Josh. We have people who voted for Joseph Boakai. So what they're going for, so assuming that those who voted for Weah will go for Weah and those who voted for Boakai will go for Boakai, we are going to, do you, even that alone, does it advantage their incumbent more? And where you think the rest of the, and that population is even small because we're talking about like 12%. Where you think this 12% going to go? By and large. Dr. Dugley.
I don't think he can hear you.
Where is it going to go?
Yeah, the 12% that didn't vote for Weah or
the 12% or 10%, whatever it is, would go. Well, I would say probably Mr. Weah had all the votes he could get, because everybody the 12% are people who did not vote for him. So depending on what kind of campaign Boakai runs, he could probably get the majority of that. So these are 12%. They didn't vote for Weah. If they had voted for him, he would be president-elect. So these are all members of the opposition. So how you do that is another thing. In 2005, I always come back to those issues. We conducted between the first and the second round. Everybody was coming to Madame Sirleaf and say, "Oh, I can bring this and I can do this, and what do you get from me?"
Right.
And we talked about it, and then we decided, we said, let's do a polling, informal polling, and find out what people really think about the second round. The question was simple: what would you do if your candidate is not in the second round? Would you follow his lead or her lead to choose a candidate, or would you follow your own conscience? 80 to 85% of the people say, no, the first vote for that candidate is gone. This is my time to vote for myself. So 80 to 85% of people say they were not going to follow the candidate from the primary or the first step. So I think it depends on how Boakai run his campaign, how they re-strategize, and keep that level of confidence going. Work as if the first part did not happen at all. Like, this is the real vote. This is the one that everybody waiting for. The first one was a primary. It was a national primary. So they have to be able to win this. And I think 12% that are left out are people who did not vote for Weah. And that is the advantage of the VP. But then again, as a non-incumbent, to remobilize the electorate is not a simple task. And as was pointed out, people who went to vote to Nimba, for example, there were probably people took 10, 15 trucks to Nimba to go vote there. And those people are not in the race anymore. Would those voters go back to there to vote? Or would they just say, well, I'm not going to pay $10, $20 to go up country to go vote for somebody, unless somebody paid me to do it. So all of those factors will come in. But I think the 12% is at the disposal of the opposition if they can do it. And then, take into account that you have opposition leaders who can help and those who you don't really need.
And that's an if. So, Mr. Kane, talking about trucking, you see that areas where President Weah won, like the Southeast, that he had more votes. We can safely assume that trucking did not affect that area. So those who voted for President Weah in that area will stay there. But areas that were around Monserrado that were being won by, like Lofa, like Nimba, like Mangibi, Bombay, those areas are the major trucking areas. Right?
So I'm laughing because trucking could not be possible in the Southeast because there's no road.
Exactly. So does that disadvantage Mr. Boakai in the second round?
So I think this is a very important question. And through the elections, especially when the results were coming out, Many of the posts that you saw, people were saying, "Oh, don't worry about the Southeast. Every number that comes from there, NIMBA will counter it."
Swallow it.
Right. Because NIMBA has around 307,000 registered voters, and the 5 counties in the Southeast have 307 registered voters. The only way that argument holds, the only way the equation holds is for NIMBA to equally produce 100% turnout as compared to 100% turnout in the Southeast.
And everybody in Nimba should vote one way.
Yes, and everybody in NIMBA should vote for GMB.
I used to interview some Boakai surrogate, and they used to say that nonsensical stuff, even on some Boakai leaning platform, parroting that same cliche.
Right. So these are the underlying kind of things people don't pay attention to. So if you have a situation where in NIMBA, not everybody vote, maybe 200,000 people vote in NIMBA, which is maybe 75% turnout, and then in Southeast, everybody turns out, then the Southeast is already ahead of NIMBA. So this is where I think people need to be very careful when they look at these numbers. But I agree with my colleagues, in the second round, it's going to be very strategic. So for instance, and I think that in the second round, everything that you do has to be driven by data. So say for instance, if your stronghold is Nimba County, and you see that turnout in Nimba County was 70%, that means you still have 30% of people in Nimba who you can push to go out there and vote, so you can increase your number that is coming from Nimba. So I think before they get out there and start to build these tents and start to campaign, like Gabriel was saying, the messages are already out there. It's either Kush or no Kush. It's either incompetence or no incompetence. People have heard this. It's for George Weah, I pay WAEC fees. People have heard that. What else are you going to say? And then the most important thing is those people who went into the election. You have some new senators that have won. For instance, in Lofa County, you have Momo Saros who has won, who is an independent candidate. So it's going to be, he's going to influence some votes based on exactly where he leans. In Bon County, for instance, you have Johnny Pehe, who is the first time running in Bon County and he won. So I think the political party that gets out as early as possible, convince people to come to your side. You have Besonga File who has won in Grand Bassa County, where they are going to lean will take some of the votes. But I think every political party should try as much as possible, retain the votes that you have, and then feed into fishing the 12% to see whether you can get additional. But it has to be really strategic. If you're not very careful, one mistake, you are out. And the second one is just simple majority. So if one person gets one more than you, you are done.
Right, and that's why I think if you look at the how things are, right? Because those who were angry with President or who didn't want to vote for President Weah, so he's not likely to lose his voters because they've been there. He got more things to promise because in my town they call it meaning you will either tomorrow or in the future. Weah has what he gave you now is today. Right? So
and that's very important because
people will towards who has it for me now that I can benefit and the hope for the future. That's one. So, number two, you also have people that actually don't like Mr. Boakai who voted for either Cummings or Gonglo or Appon. And these people, they say, well, and we see that coming from the ANC. I have seen it coming from few of the Gonglo voters saying, hey, we are not going to do this. We go for Weah. I've seen a lot of ANC people saying that. So
yeah, it's interesting because I think the major tools that these political leaders have in their tool bag for Mr. Weah is the resources. He can pay you cash down. Today. For former President Boakai, the greatest former Vice President Boakai, the greatest tool that he has in his tool bag is the issue of inclusion. Even in the speech that he made today, he keep hammering this message that when I form my government, every county is going to have a minister in my regime. Therefore, it's going to be diverse. And that is the greatest disadvantage to President Weah. Because even the political parties that were with him in the collaboration, they never got a fair share of their representation in government. So I think the major decision for those in the 18% is going to be, do you want to get your resource? Do you want to get something now and invest it and get a return on it? or you want to save your money in a bank and withdraw over the next 6 years. So I think these are two things that will actually influence them. It's going to be interesting in the next 1 week to see where each of them will shift.
It's a great point. Yeah.
Mr. Salif, I give you 30 seconds. I see that I see something boiling in you.
No, the better day thing was making me laugh.
Yeah.
Waiting for better day versus I can give you it now, and even if it's not my money, but I have it at my disposal, I can distribute it. That's where, yeah, although I do agree that it's about strategy in every sense of the word. Strategy in going after those who are out of the race, strategy in going after newly elected senators and representatives. They have followings, they have
Yeah.
influence. You want to go after them. The key, particularly the new ones that are coming for the first time to go to the legislature. You can go after those, and try to help them. Try to have them help you, be a surrogate, be a apologist, whatever it is, speak for you, get on the radio, and GOTV, get out the vote, is really what increase your vote, make sure the other person votes decrease.
Yeah.
Thank
And
you.
as we normally say in the business world, a bird in the hand is worth two in the bush. Give me my dollar now. I don't want to worry about $2 later. Seriously.
But it's not always like that in politics, because the thing is, the people are looking at future gains, right?
Yeah.
That sharing of the national cake. If the people that are there right now were very regional and tribalistic and whatnot, party centric, they
Yeah.
were not inclusive enough, and they see the other person has the potential to be inclusive, people will look at that. They will look at something larger than themselves.
Yeah. You're right.
Thank you.
That was a joke, by the
Thank you.
way. So I hope you don't take it at face value.
Thank you. This tomorrow at 8 p.m. on our Friday night debate, we're going to be discussing who will win the runoff and why. That's why we are not touching it tonight. We are only analyzing what we expect. Come tomorrow, Friday night, on our Friday night debate, who will win the runoff elections and why. At this time, we're going to, this thing, it keeps happening. Every week, we have Tabata going on. What's your Tabata of the week?
Oh, that's a great question. I don't think I have. I don't remember.
Okay,
Mr. Kane, let you go
let-
first.
I think my Tabata of the week is this statement that Jefferson Koji made that it was over. They were only preparing for inauguration. I saw an article in Daily Observer, and they were saying that was a reckless statement.
Mr. Salif, your Tabata of the week.
I think it has to be the generals. Akara's grade, was assuring everybody that he knew what he was doing. He had a magic number, and he won. And the Peking was just making noise. The elder can see sitting while the child can see running around, and it turned out that the child could actually see and knew what they were doing. So the general is out.
Thank you. Dr. Dugley, what's your Tabata of the week?
My Tabata of the week is international. It's the fight in Israel between Palestinians and Israelis. It's a sad Tabata.
Thank you. Mr. Carter.
I don't think you want to call it Tabata, but I was surprised to see the number of senators and representatives that got defeated. Like some of these people, I didn't even know they were even in politics. Like the list is so lengthy and the names that are on there. Like when I was looking at it, I was wondering, what were these people doing for those people? Like the whole time they were in power. What were they doing for those people? And one of my you know maybe famous guy that I know is Mr. Sherman, Vani Sherman. This is if you want to call it like a very known lawyer, and he you know flew under the radar for so long, and the people finally caught up with him and took him out. So it's not a taba taba. It was just surprising to me that we have those kind of that many people in position. They never done anything. They just flew under the radar. Liberian people always catch on with you, so they caught up with them. So
I think that Tabata for him will be his justification for losing.
Yes, I was about to say. You said that people basically are stupid. They don't know what they want, so they didn't vote for
right.
And my question was, if you were senator for 9 years and the people
I'll
don't know
put
what
it
you were
on
doing.
the Speaker Chambers.
Right.
Yeah.
So I had to play Councillor Sherman, I think 3 or 4 times to really understand what he was driving at.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
oh, they never ask you what you're there for, you know. So for
Yeah,
all this time, they
Did
didn't
he
ask you
say
where
that?
you were spending the money.
Did he say that?
He said that. He said that people don't ask. They don't know why you there. They don't ask why you
The
there.
people don't ask the right questions.
Wow.
Yeah.
No, but then the issue is that all the
So
legislators need to
lawyer,
make reports.
you want
They
to
make
run
legislative
for
reports.
president, and he said people don't ask the right question.
I was so happy that he got out. I'm sorry, not just him, but everybody who got, because I haven't heard about any of these other people. Nothing.
Where have you been? You didn't hear about TJ in Sino?
Yeah.
For him, the reason why I was happy that he's out, I had so much.
Well, he got out.
I expected a lot from him. You know, given that he's a very prominent lawyer, I expected him to put out some bills that will advance the country and your people forward. But he just flew under the radar easily for 9 years.
Carter, he was sanctioned by the U.S. government for corruption, for bribing, for, so, yeah, I mean, it's a very sad, tragic story. Talk about he's retiring from politics after losing.
I think
I'm glad.
One of the things is
that Matabata is Vanishama say he retired after losing his election.
Go ahead, Kane.
Then we have, let me get more Tabata here. This one from Darling Wood. Say Matabata is Mr.
Border.
Matabata of the week is Mr. Boda believing that he can score the winning goal on a former AC Milan and PSG striker George. Oh, you mean Boakai?
Yeah. That is a punchline. Wow.
Yeah. And my Tabata to me is these political parties, especially the Unity Party, promising these tally sheets, say we have won, we got them in the bag, only to find out that they got nothing. Zero.
Papa coming home with black plastic.
Yeah, the man of people call it Fefe. Nothing. Don't do that again. That's complete Tabata.
Perfect.
All right. Sorry, we're not going to take calls tonight, but join us tomorrow. We're going to have the debate night. At this time, we're going to go around the room and get your closing comments. And you can just tell us the direction of the runoff and what you think of it. Let me start here with Mr. Okana. Mr. Okana, your closing.
Well, I think the Liberian people already came out, and on October 10, regardless of all the fear mongering, the process was peaceful. I mean, I spoke to people who woke up as early as 5 o'clock in the morning to go and secure a place in the line. So I think on November 7, they will just go back to be able to complete the process that they started. The point was made earlier that, I mean, the 12% that did not vote for George Weah, they probably had problem. They did not believe in his leadership. If they did, we wouldn't be going to second round. So it's really a tight race. I do think that in this second round, it's an election for grab for any of them, either President Weah or former Vice President Boakai. But I think Mr. Boakai goes into the race with some kind of strength, because if George Weah was leading him, say 5 to 10%, that would have actually thrown them off in the second round. But I think they have something to base on, go back and mobilize their bases, and they can give George Weah a very tough time in the runoff election. So I think all of them need to put their best strategic teams together. The Election Commission needs to learn from the little errors and challenges that it had to be able to go through. I don't agree with the point entirely on the resources issue. I think one of the resources that did not come on time was this $3 million that the Ministry of Finance needed to give to them. But out of a budget of $50 million, they did provide resources to them. On the issue of the biometric voter registration, the major problem was how they handled the contracting issue with the PPCC. That wasn't a money issue. It was a technical issue that the Election Commission had a problem on. So, I mean, we just call on the Liberian people, go back as peacefully as you did on October 7. Go to the runoff, vote for the person you want to vote for, let it be peaceful, and let the final decision be made. And then beyond October or November 7, we can then get to the point of actually trying to figure out or project what the governance is going to be, deciding on who is going to win. But good show. I'm happy that.
So Thomas, before you end, the invalid votes.
Right.
Where you think they're going to go? Is Boakai or we are going to go there and at least train people how to vote correctly so that they can reap the benefits of the 115,000, because that can sway the election.
Yes. So this is one thing now, like I'm saying, that the second round, whatever these political parties do, have to be driven by data. And one of the data they have to work on is the issue of the invalid votes. So when you go out there, you're not only telling people that go and vote, you are telling them how to mark the ballot correctly. And one thing I have to say is that it is actually not the constitutional responsibility of political parties to do civic and voter education. It is the National Elections Commission responsibility. The political parties only do it because they want people to vote for them. So the Election Commission also need to take cue from here and see how they can improve on civic and voter education so that number can actually reduce in the second round, in the runoff.
Thank you. Dr. Duklo, your closing, sir.
Well, I think the process is on, and what can you say? It's just a new campaign, new strategies, new people. I mean, the 12% that did not vote for the president are still out there for anyone to grab. So it depends how well they're organized. And I think it's all, up to the campaign, really, to go educate the people. Now you don't have 20 people on the one page, you have only 2. And you got 1 man and 1 woman and 1 man and 1 man. So there shouldn't be no difficulty. People should know the difference. But the bigger challenge is really to get people out, because nobody likes to go twice, get up 4 o'clock in the morning, go stand in line twice, for the same reason. So, energizing the voters and getting them out and keeping the momentum going, because now it's a down, everybody's like down now. Say, oh, we thought both CDC and UP thought they were going to win the first round for some reason. So they're going to go through a week of, down, and then pick themselves up in the second week, and the third week will be really the campaign to finish it. And I think Boakai has a good chance to do good if we focus on unity, spreading the message, and getting everybody on board, which is not too difficult because everybody was in the opposition in the first place.
Right. This Tabata from Sam Wallace. My Tabata of the week is the UP surrogates who seem to be reluctant to go to the second round and advocating for a recount when they should be energized and fired up about round 2. It just means that those UP folks were never ready for this campaign.
I agree with him. They were never ready. They've been lazy since the beginning. I don't know how they made it this far.
I know where you're coming from.
No, but
Mr. Carter, let me get your closing.
Yeah, let me give my closing before I start fighting people on this platform right now.
They see people already.
We were ready, but we just got thrown out. The party, that's a different thing, So here's something that I've said, and I will say this again.
Okay.
I believe that we should have a better way of voting, meaning that we have a runoff, we have a first round and second round. I don't think that is a good use of the Liberian people time. And because of that, I believe the second round is going to be a low turnout. I think Mr. Salif alluded to that. bringing people out again to turn out the way that they turn out, I doubt people are going to come out the way that they came out the first round. And if
you
they
mean we should
don't,
have a simple majority to win the election?
we should get to that seriously, because we need to be a productive country, and we're not. That's not a good use of people's time. You brought them out, they voted, and then you're going to take them out again, say, hey, come back out to come vote again. Like Mr. Salis pointed out, some people came from distant places to cast their vote. You're going to pay their way, or they're going to pay their transportation to come out again and to come cast a vote. You know, I don't think we're going to have a good turnout in the second round. That's one. The other thing I wanted to talk about is this is a plea to whoever wins. Please, somebody pass a bill to allow Liberian people in the diaspora to be able to vote from here. Either at the embassy, we should be able to cast our vote in the embassy, or however, to trying to go back to it's okay now that we have dual citizenship, we can go back and vote, right? Or you can go back and vote, but it'll be even easier if we can do that here from the from the U.S. embassy. So somebody, if you're listening, whatever you are, a senator or representative, put through a bill to allow that to happen.
And Mr. Carlo, just we don't need a bill because it's in the Constitution that we should do this.
It's in the Constitution. We can vote. It's just the technicality.
Yeah, but we're not able to do that here from the embassy. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
Right. So you don't need a bill.
It's just a violation of the existing law, Carter. That they're not.
Exactly. So somebody undo that, so we'll be able to do that. Anyway, that's hopefully somebody listening will be able to do
that. Did Mr. Cummings talk about that during the campaign? I'm just curious.
Huh?
Did Mr. Cummings talk about that during the campaign?
I'm not sure. Maybe he did. I didn't hear him. I didn't.
All right. Thank you. Let me read my last Tabata from Arthur Doe. He said my Tabata is of the week is everywhere failure to get hold of a tally sheet copy. That's a complete Tabata, Arthur Doe, because even a Unity Party get tally sheet, you expect me to get tally sheet?
Well, FL criticizing Unity Party, FL should have it, I guess.
Mr. Salif, you're closing.
Yeah, thank you. Good show. I want to speak to violence in the second round, that those who are the candidates, the surrogates, the campaigns should really avoid spilling blood, killing people, violence, electoral violence.
But they are not punished when they do it.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. No investigation, it seems like there's high impunity, and that is really a motivational factor for people who think that they can just get away with, right, beating on people in the street, killing people, like just walking away, literally. It's very sad. At the end of the day, look, we're all fighting for the same thing. If we truly mean the true exercise of our citizenship, we want a better Liberia. And so no one politician or no one campaign is better than the other in terms of their rights to be alive or to be Liberian. No one's child, whether poor or rich or educated or not educated, should die because somebody's trying to get elected and get into office. And so I think all of us in the media should encourage the candidates in the second round, their supporters, to tune down the vitriolic, incendiary language and rhetoric, and not inside. We saw security officers pushing innocent civilians, not so innocent because they were orchestrating violence, but to actually follow orders and hurt them. That's the whole thing about tribal sentiment, religious sentiment, just politicizing people's ethnicity and so on. I think it's uncalled for. Liberia has been to a very terrible place before. We do not want to return there. And so I will be watching out for that and just advocating for peace throughout this runoff process.
Thank you so much, gentlemen, for talking tough tonight. I want to thank our viewers and even those who will watch later. Until then, as we go into runoff, let's remember we are all Liberians, regardless of who you support in the second round or third round. That's why we close with the song that says we are all Liberians. Have a good night and God bless you.
We are Liberians. Liberia is our home.